Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by to catch episode 1 of my podcast, Fiction Factory. This is where I have the opportunity to discuss ideas, world building, games, and everything fiction, including the reality needed to create incredible stories and games. For my first guest, I have Sean Crow, who's working on getting his first book published called Gods Reborn. He also participates as part of a local writing group once a week with fellow indie authors to edit and critique their works of fiction. You can find his writings and short stories at lordofcrows.com, and I'll be sure to include a link to his website as part of the description. He's been a friend of mine for over a decade and is currently a teacher in Eastern Oregon. It is my hope that our discussion brings some levity to your day and hopefully some insights on how to get your own projects going. Thanks again for listening and enjoy the podcast. All right. So, here we are, first podcast, and even better than that is that we have a chance to actually talk to you, you've been doing a lot with your writing in general. So, Sean, I just wanted to kind of come through and admonish a little bit about what you've been doing and why, just kind of to start it all off. Because to me, it seems like the process is absolutely convoluted, and I don't know that I'm pretty sure that there's going to be other people that are going to think and feel the same exact way. And how many people have you been rejected by now?
So I finished my first book 6 months ago, 5-6 months ago, and on agent spree. I sent out to probably 55, 56 agents. Literary agents, and I've been rejected by 24 now, 25 as of last week, actually. Yeah.
Wow, and it's okay. So you've reached out to 50-something agents, and you've been rejected by half of them at least.
Yeah, and most of them are there's a pre-done letter that's like, oh no, this isn't my thing. I've had nothing really too harsh. I've had a couple that made me laugh. And then I've had 2 really good conversations with agents that were really helpful to really reach out to others, I think. John Gerald in particular, if anybody's familiar with John Gwynn, I see him as a mentor. He probably just gets annoyed with my questions, but he's been answering my questions for 3 years and kind of helping me out. He referred me to John Gerald, which was his former literary agent, I believe. And that guy, we had a back and forth. He kind of told me things I could fix up if I needed to, his opinion of where I kind of stood in the rankings. And it was a good dialogue. So.
Well, not a half bad start, especially having some networking thrown in there. And the part that kills me that I can't seem to wrap my head around is the fact that you seem to be able to crawl your way into certain people's lives, kind of like with the artists and such, because you just recently had somebody come back to you and say, yeah, you can write about my stuff. Who was that?
So I've been trying to Bob Rozalski for a year, and nothing crazy, not stalking him or anything like that, but I sent him a bunch of messages on Facebook and I'd always try to comment on his stuff, and because I love that guy's art. It really just tripped my trigger. And so, yeah, I've been sending out to him. And then finally I started Instagram 3 weeks ago, something like that. And I finally saw one of his posts as soon as it went on there. I was like, hey, I really love writing about your stuff. Can I get your permission to write something and then tag you in it? And then he got back to me. He's like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. Right, there we go. So it might not amount to anything. It could just be I tag him in it, and he's like, "Oh, cool." That's it, or nothing. But yeah.
Well,
it's all about the hustle. I mean, you just gotta hustle, and expect rejection. So.
Yeah, well, the expecting rejection is something I'm quite familiar with, if I say so myself.
My life's full of rejection.
Yeah, there used to be a time whenever I have a hard issue, because it always seemed like you were leaps and bounds ahead of me. I always wanted to do my writing, and I was always kind of lagging behind. And you had done, I think I started something with an online publishing. I was going through Amazon and the rest of that. I'm still going to try and give that a shot. I don't know how that's going to work, but I think that'll actually still work out well. But you ended up getting your art piece for the first part of it, and I was just sort of damn it. Like, he's always one step ahead, this guy. I don't get it. And, like, yeah, but it was funny because I was never really truly envious. It was just kind of like, I want to be where he's at. Why the shit am I not where he's at? You know? This is like, wound up just being a time consumption and another kind of issue altogether. And, which thankfully I've managed to work out. Now, so I'm part of your writing group, which you introduced me to, which was a huge sanity saver because it's drug me out of a major kind of like pitfall, and I've been trying to like build up my own, backing and such like that, and it's kind of thanks to you on that front. And how long have you been doing the writing group though?
Well, so I got my buddy Will, and he's not well, you've met Will. He's a poet.
Yeah.
He's my hippie friend that's a poet. Him and I just hit it off like 3.5 years ago, and we always talked about, hey, it'd be cool if we just got a bunch of writers and stuff like that. We talked about it, and he's a mover and shaker in our little town, and so he knows who has actually gone out and written books and stuff like that, and he got us together. We used to meet up at an old little coffee shop, the Orange Rhino, which went out of business, unfortunately. But yeah, they gave us the key to that place, and we just started meeting. So yeah, a little over 2 years, 2.5 years, and it's been really helpful. If anybody is listening and you want to go into writing, get yourself a writing group, because it's so helpful to be around like-minded people. Like, writing's so solitary. Like, you're always by yourself. You're always in your own head, and you go crazy in there, like you come up with all these ideas, and some of them are awesome and some of them really suck. And it's good to be around people that are willing to tell you that idea sucks. So,
Yeah.
Like, I've had things I'm like, man, I just don't think this idea is going to pan out. And they're like, oh, that's so cool. So, yeah, writing groups are super helpful. And
Yeah. I know it's been like a major move for me in this case. That sense of accountability has been really major because of like actually having to produce something at least once a week. Or like, you don't want to be the guy who's just in the writing group constantly critiquing everybody else. You turn into an asshole. Like, or at least that's what you start to feel like. It's like, Jesus, I haven't written a damn thing. I'm just telling everybody else how their work sucks. I need to produce something. So it puts you on that track. Yeah. It does it really well. And I know that, like, heck, I've managed to do a couple of now I've gotten one more short story written, and that was all thanks to the fact that I really deeply needed to have something to put in there for you guys to go over. And I also just like having myself hit in the face with a whole bunch of critiques anyway.
Yeah.
But I guess that's just kind of me. I like that criticism because it just kind of slams me into the reality, and I can change whatever's needing to be fixed. But yeah, I mean, shoot, you got me in there months ago. I didn't even realize it was going for that long, but that's good stuff. Mm-hmm. So I guess that kind of like turns directly into probably the longest winded kind of thought I have about all this, which is you've got tabletop role playing. So that's how we met, and probably the best damn way to meet somebody in your shoes, period. And you're always kind of like the person that I have said that's kind of like a nerd jock, and I've always tried to blend it together like a jerk or a knock or something like that, and I just don't know how to fit it together. But yeah, I mean, like, you seriously, out of all of us there, you had me, I was kind of tubby, you had David when he was still around, he was the skinny rail of a human being that barely, like, blow away in a light breeze. And then we had you, and you were always so stacked all the time, like your shirts barely fit. You were just kind of like, hello, I am here. Like, I'm just like, it's really impressive, like, how, like, physically fit you are, and you're doing all the rest of this as well. But, so, not to go too much into the system just yet, but, like, we met whenever I started playing it out. So, like, just for a recap, just for pure shits and giggles, like, let's walk through that first experience, because I know for a fact that it's had an influence on a lot of the writing on the way in, so I just want to hear it again.
Well, yeah, so I'll do a little bit of a prologue then. Yeah, I remember I was living with David at the time, and I was...
Oh, you were? I didn't even realize that you were living with him still.
No, well, yeah, so, technically living, I hopped to a lot of people's houses at that time. I I was still playing college ball and that stuff. I mean, my very short college football experience. But I remember it was like right after I think I couldn't play anymore. And, after my back got all screwed up. And so I couldn't play anymore. I remember sitting there and David's like, I played the coolest game ever. Like, what? And he goes, oh man, like I'm like this kind of angel guy, but kind of not, like dark, and I have like these wings, and you know how David gets, really
Yeah,
all
yeah.
over the place. And I was like, well, this sounds cool, and I'd heard about gaming and stuff before, and I was just like, well, that sounds fun. I'll try it. And so yeah, he invited me over to your house, and then I remember sitting down with you in Shadows, which is my favorite thing of all time, still is, of all the gaming we've ever done. That and 40K. Of all the gaming we've ever done, Shadows is the best because I remember sitting down with you after we just met, and I go, okay, so do I need to like roll dice or something? Like, how do I make this? And you go, well, what is if you could be a character with like superpowers or whatever, just some character you think would be awesome, what would it be? I was like, oh, okay. I always thought it'd be cool to live like forever, but not be immortal, so you could die. I don't know why I thought that was cool, but And so I ended up making this semi-immortal Greek swordsman that lived in a cyberpunk setting. He'd just been alive. Nobody could kill him. Like he just couldn't die. Like he could die, but he wasn't willing to let himself die. And then he's got this voice in his head, and he can't tell if he created the personality or if it's actually somebody talking Dio. And so we hashed out this character, and then it was, yeah, I mean, just being introduced into it, it was kind of like going back. I felt into a time when people would tell stories verbally, like gather around the campfire and listen to a story. Except this was a story you got to be part of, And I got to give you big props because that's like where you thrive is like sitting there and creating this world and describing it. I remember you always have like these epic playlists in the background with like on your big TV, it was like all these cool images passing by, and you're like, yeah, okay, I'm here now. This is cool. And like even approaching it, because I had tried to tabletop game with people in the past, and they use figurines, and that wasn't my thing. But with you would just describe the scene, and I didn't have to worry about who was trying to nerf on the rules and who was trying to do this and do that. And the experiences I had before just didn't get me excited about it. But when we were doing it, and it was really a lot more role playing. I mean, there's always the rules, which are great, but I loved your homebrew, and I loved that it was like so immersive and really open. Like it wasn't like this is the path we're traveling on. You have a quest, you go on. It wasn't linear. It was like, okay, well, what do you do? Like you're at home, you got a call. There's a job, and I'd be like, well, no, I have other priorities. I got to do this. And so then that could, or we'd latch onto an NPC. Who was the guy with the changing eye patch?
Oh, yeah, that was part of the whole Dark
Yeah,
Slayers aspect of it. Right afterwards, he basically got a generic name because nobody knew his name. It was basically that
yeah,
guy or just guy, and like yeah, and he had his one primary ability was to transform any piece of technology into whatever he wanted, as big or as small as he needed. It just was a matter of, if it was a gun and you wanted to turn it into like a full blown turret of some sort, it took a long time to get it to forge itself into that. But yeah, I know what you're talking
yeah.
about. What the heck was
Is
his
it
name?
Victor? I want to say it started with a V, but maybe not.
It was, and I think it was Victor actually. Victor Nobody.
Yes, that was it. Victor No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like he wasn't even meant to be like a character, but we all like latched
No.
onto him, and so he became part of the story, and we helped him out, and he tagged along, and like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure other people have those experiences, but I just loved how open your world was, and how it never felt linear. And I
Yeah.
don't like games that feel linear. We have to go on a quest. We have to do this. We have to do that. We have to. I think some of the most fun we ever had gaming was having the open experience.
Well, and I think that's actually kind of where I shine compared to most people. So a lot of the times, like, not to knock on people that do modules, I can't do them. Like I can feel my brain cramping the second I try to think about doing a module, because it's almost like I'm trying to fit myself into somebody else's pants, and they happen to be a 12-year-old girl. Like, I just can't. I would just I'd rip right through it, and it would just be like, well, I've got these rags now, and I'm hanging out with my boxers in wide open public, so just yeah, just a bit. It just, to me, it just seems so weird, and this is coming from a guy that used to be in drama when he was in high school, for crying out loud. That's probably going to kill me later. But the biggest thing is that I can memorize a script, sure, but that's when it's supposed to play out a certain way. When you're dealing with characters that you want to actually feel like they've got three-dimensionality and functionality, you have to do it within that sense of being organic. You can't just sit there and go, like you're saying, being a linear track.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's yeah. I remember how that's meant, and I remember that's basically my tagline. It's almost like if I want to find a new player, I'm like, hey, if you could be anything you ever wanted, what was that character you wanted to play that you never got a chance to play the way you wanted? It's like some sort of pickup line, like I'm trying to turn them on before they show up at my table.
How you get?
Yeah, yeah. So, that being said, but like gaming in and of itself has always been a huge deal, and I've always wanted to write about it. Now, that campaign in particular lasted what, 3.5 years or something?
Something like
It was, yeah, it was a while. Like, we just really powered through it. Almost got to the end.
we hammered it for like a year and a half, I think, before we even transitioned into something new. Like, we always fell back to it, but for like a good year and a half, almost 2 years, we just played Shadows straight, and then we branched out a little bit. I think when there was a lull, I think when like it wasn't even a lull. I think it was more us. Like, I think you were a little fatigued, and which happens. I mean, when you tell a story for 2 years, you might want a different flavor, maybe. But
Just a little.
But then
yeah.
we do it like every other or every 3 gaming sessions. But we were gaming once or twice a week then, and late nights. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
then you branch into so many other things. I can remember just about every. Well, I wouldn't say just about every character. There were a lot of one-hit wonders and such. But
Yeah. Well, and of course there was that one time period where I was in the middle of trying to create my own system, and then Solomon was born, and he was the one that would just literally live through every variant universe that I ever generated, just because the mechanics didn't fit right. So he'd get rebuilt onto a totally new character sheet altogether, and it was just like, okay, let's try it out. And I just remember hearing the groan, going, "Oh my God, can we stop?"
I tried to kill that guy a few times, but
I know. I remember. You're like, I'm
like,
done.
I'm going to
I don't want to play anymore.
into that giant cyborg ogre. Why not? I'm just going to straight at him, man. Crit. Okay.
Yeah, that never worked out in your favor. It's weird how that worked.
Yeah.
Well, and we experimented with other systems as well. So, but to digress back just a little bit, so you met us, and I say us because it was earlier on. So you met me, and then we did the whole game thing, and then that kind of like took off. Now, what's weird is that I almost feel like the side of you wanting to write was almost ignited, like right at that moment, sort of like where you were just kind of like, you were always had it, I think, because I don't know for sure, but just because of my experience, I looked at you and went, seems like he's like really inspired to start doing like writing and novels and stuff like that. Like a little past this point, it was like storytelling really became important, and you started to really drive at it.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big thing. I think I told you that. Yeah, because just the way you would describe things, it would get my mind going. And I think with gaming, if you're not rehashing commonly used ideas, like I've had fun with Dungeons and Dragons, and I've had fun with Pathfinder, but they recycle old ideas a lot, and I think one of the refreshing things, like when you did it, it didn't feel like we had recycled ideas. And I think that's the thing. Like, please don't have me go on a quest we'd run into dragons, I think, in a few campaigns, but it wasn't like we're going to win this. It's like, no, this is a giant 40-foot lizard that will... It's not going to happen, buddy. And so there's that ounce of realism. Like hit points played a factor to a certain degree, but if something made sense, something made sense. If that thing hit you with the tail, you're done.
Yeah.
Sorry. I remember I played that halfling one time, and we went up against a golem or something like that, and it hit me with a hammer. And I was like, well, I try to get back up. You're like, you can't get back up. Your ribs are gravel. I got more hit points. You're like, yeah, and you're dying. Fair enough. You got to remember, you're that big. You're not. That thing is 5 times your size, your weight, and it just smacked you right in the midsection. You're down. Yeah, and that I like. But yeah, I mean, it really did spark my creativity, and it helped me get out of the box. You know, the box that I hate. It helped me really think outside of it, because the characters that you come up with had so much depth to them. You know, like I said with Victor Nobody, like he was just an NPC, nobody that we weren't supposed to care about, but you gave him so much personality, so much depth. We wanted to find out more about him. You did that with a ton of characters that sometimes played a role, sometimes didn't, sometimes left you wanting. And I think that idea of being left wanting or having this vast world that you don't always get to know how everything works, but it works that way. You know what I mean? And that always would get me thinking. And I remember I wrote a lot during that time, and I still have some of the stuff I wrote then. And compared to what I write now, I hate it. But it's just like anything. If you look back,
I love the fact that there's so much disdain. It's like I read what I hate it. Like just
I mean, like the stuff I wrote, I'd say I really started getting my stride like year and a half ago. I think I started getting into my stride, but the stuff before that, man. And I'm sure in another 2-3 years, I'll look at the stuff I wrote now and be like, crap, that's awful. I hate it. I'm better than that now.
I'm so much better than last year, me.
New me hates old me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I guess that's kind of the trick to it. Is just being able to. You have to be able to survive the capacity to suck.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it is. Like I'm actually starting to pick up like drawing to some degree, and the strange mutant creatures that I'm putting on these pages is not. It's not okay. Like. But I'm just like, but for whatever reason, I've bypassed the point where I care. So I'm just kind of like, fine, it's just going to be some mutant water monster. That's fine. I'll just move on to the next one. Like, and I'm trying to draw a face, and it kind of looks like a hot dog with a personality. But you know, I'm just doing my best. But I'm figuring that I'll probably end up getting good at it at some point, and that's kind of the trick. Is just literally stopping yourself from giving a shit enough to where you can just advance. Yeah. And then like once you get past that point, you're okay, because then you can start looking back on it going like, yeah, that stuff's awful, but you know, I'm so much better now.
Yeah. You know,
and that was always hard.
Who said it? I should know. Kill your darlings. I am drawing a blank, and he's a huge American author. I can't think of his name. Anyway, kill your darlings, right? So like everything that you write now will eventually be crap. So be willing to trash them in order to improve, you know? And that's something that has been, it's going to drive me crazy until I think of it. Was it Faulkner? Maybe it was Faulkner. I want to say it was Faulkner. Anyways, yeah, I mean, just being, I don't know if it's Faulkner.
As I watch this, just like your head explode.
Oh, well, whoever said it. Smart guy or gal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's one thing, and that's one thing I think in the writing group that was hard for some people. And this was before you showed up. I remember, like, I'd just be like, no, I'll trash that idea. And they'd be like, what do you mean? What do you mean, trash that idea? And then, yeah, it was just like, if the idea doesn't work, or it's like I said with the last book I wrote, that I sent out to all those agents. If not a single agent picks that up, I will drop that idea like a hot rock, and I'll move on to something else, because I'm not going to sit here and bang my head against the wall. I've got a ton of ideas, you know? So
Yeah. Yep.
Killed.
Gotta go with the one that works.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Well, and so yeah, I mean, like, I think that's the part where I feel kind of like, sort of like proud in this particular sense because, somehow or another, I've had an influence on how you write now, and that's pretty freaking neat because you're about ready to like, because to me, like, my gut instinct tells me that you're right there, like you're so close. Like, you're so close to getting to where I want to be, which is like fully published and the whole 9 yards. And, crap, I'm having a hard time even finishing chapter 5 for the short novella that I'm trying to do with this remake of Little Red Riding Hood, which I think is kind of awesome all to itself. I mean, like, basically, they always tell you to steal from the greats. Kind of like, you have to, like, study various people like Michelangelo and his painting work. If you want to learn how to be a good painter, you basically model that, or Leonardo da Vinci. You just go after and you steal what they do. You steal their techniques so you can improve at it. And I'm just stealing from Grimm's Brothers. It's kind of the same idea. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to go like, well, this has been played out, but we're just going to retry it. But at the same time, I'm still having that struggle where I was like, I want to go back to chapter 5, but all of a sudden I am just pooping out all these ideas, and they're all about shadows, and I'm like creating this whole thing. And it's like, it's coming together. So like that one's kind of been pushed to the side, and I'm going to find myself in a position where it's like, I'll get back to that. And it may end up being one of the darlings I trash, which I don't want to do necessarily, but it's probably one of the ones that can wind up getting left behind, if nothing else, just collecting dust.
Yeah.
But there's so many other things that I'm kind of advancing towards that I'm just kind of like, it just feels right. It's easier to write about, and the last one that I wrote, like Once Bitten, to be perfectly freaking honest, I was not expecting the way you guys reacted to that. I was expecting something a bit more like hard hitting about the critique, but it was just like, oh, you did exactly what you want. I'm like, well, shit. It's kind of like, it's like, well, like, no notes, do you? It's fantastic. Moving on. Like, it's like, I almost felt left out. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a hard one to swallow, actually, is like, and that's a hard time I've had because I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like when there's no bad critiques, everybody's just like, oh, that's cool. You're like, and? Continue? What else is, like, give me something, because it's not perfect. Right? Like,
right, there's got to be something there.
Yeah, yeah. There's always room to grow. Hang on, I got my heater going. This is a toasty.
And I think that's probably the part that I have difficulty with. It's like I usually expect there to be a critique some way or somehow. And, like I said, whenever I got slammed with those, like, yeah, you did exactly what you wanted to do. And you guys had the little nagging things, and that was fine. And I managed to go through and update that with those in mind. But, that's the other thing, too. Like, I don't know if this is going to be advisable for everybody, but I went through and I did one last little tidbit. And I took the story and slapped it into Grammarly on the website. Just threw it in there. There was like 20 missing articles in the story as it was as his final draft. And I'm just face palming through this whole thing.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my God, because I'm sitting here reading it out loud and I'm just inserting where things are missing. Mm-hmm. And I was just in stunned disbelief. I couldn't believe it. Just because of the fact that it's like, I'm just reading over all this crap, and it's like, it's making sense out loud, but if I had handed it to somebody else, and it's just sort of like, why that last job was pain in the ass. Like, hey, we're missing something here, it doesn't sound right. But I was adding a pain in the ass, and, it's like, okay, well, it sounds right when I say it, but that's not how it's written. Mm-hmm. And just, it screwed me up. So Grammarly is a good way to go. I mean, as far as like a free editor in terms of you don't have to go talk to somebody. You can just scream at your computer about how crappy your writing is, and it'll just tell you everything that's wrong. But it's cool that way.
I've got Grammarly. It doesn't pick up on everything, but I also have the free version.
Same thing for me.
Maybe it would pick up on more. It's good. I don't. There's some things I disagree with it on, and
yeah. Well, there's style points. Yeah. So, like, whenever you're doing certain styles of writing, it picks that up as grammar incorrect, and that's where I'm like, I'm going to leave it, because it's like, no, that's a style point. It literally has that purpose.
Yeah.
And I had to skip quite a few of them. But, like, missing articles, as far as, like, the raw, you're missing the word a here, or, something else like that, that's really great for that, because I miss that crap, like, so bad. Mm-hmm. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's nice that when you're typing in the moment and it's like squiggle eyes, you're like, oh crap, what did I do? Oh yeah, I did this.
but yeah, so it's like, okay, before jumping into the gaming aspect of it, like, so, like, I kind of, so like the critiquing thing, it's weird. Like, more often than not, I'm looking for like the big chunks, like something like stylization or something that makes the writing improve as a whole, like in a grand scheme. And it was kind of like when we were talking in last group from last week, and I realized that the cadence of Jason's writing was so even and symmetrical that it literally kind of lulled me to sleep a little bit. And I was like, I mean, he's saying good things. We're learning about what's happening, and it's like it's actually genuinely, moving the story along. But it's at this perfect pace that's like a machine. Like you could watch something do the same thing at the same cadence. And whenever I was like, oh, that's it, and it popped up in my head, it's like we need to change the cadence and make this work because it's not popping enough. There's not enough of an organic flow through that makes it like really stand out. Like it doesn't keep you interested. There's not enough hills and valleys. It's so flat.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. He and I have been talking about that a little off and on. I met him with his kids at the park, and yeah, he was wondering about that. We were talking about maybe it's too many transitions.
Mm,
So it could be that, hey, I get that this individual is walking from here to here. Um, Maybe if you cut that out, like, do we really need to know that? Maybe that's what's kind of dragging it out. You're giving us information that we don't really care about. That's informative. It's really good, and it adds depth. But is it paramount to the story? Is it paramount to the building of this character, getting us to understand this person? But then again, and I have to say, Dee, because you and I have a similar style, uh,
yeah.
and there's people that are in more in Jason's category that really like those details, and they really like, there's so many
Yeah, that's
styles
true.
out there. You and I are kind of like boom, right hook, left hook, cross, boom, bam, and there's other people that are like, no, I want to see this play out. I want to see the scene. I have tried to read Tolkien so many times. Like I've tried 5 times in my life. I've tried so many times. It didn't help. I started with The Hobbit. I hear that one's the driest, but even The Lord of the Rings, I just pick it up and I don't care. I don't care about the details I am reading. I appreciate Tolkien for everything he brought for fantasy. Man, kudos to you. It's great. But I am not that kind of reader. I'm not because that's just ugh.
Well, and I think so you and I are character based type
Yeah,
authors. We like to do around the character, the world, and the backdrop add the extra flavor, but the character's the focus, and we want to see how they're affected and how they're solving the problems. We don't necessarily want to go like, oh hey, this rock is approximately 20 centimeters long. It was part of this age-old tradition where they shoved it up an orifice at one point. It's like you don't want to know about all these extra things,
yeah,
and it's just sort of like, yeah,
very
it's a
Tolkien.
freaking 20 cent. Yeah. Well, and the thing about it is like, from what I understand, he actually lost track of where he was supposed to be going in the middle of all of that, and it was kind of peculiar because he just kind of like droned on and on and on. I think there was like somebody. It's been forever since I've read Lord of the Rings. Last time I read it, funny enough, I was considered to be illiterate, so I don't remember much. I just remember reading it and going like, "Oh, that's funny. They had a wall to the north side," and I just thought it was just like a wall that was detached from everything. And I was trying to figure out why the orcs didn't just go around it and start killing everybody on the other side. I didn't realize that it was a perfectly enclosed space. Like it didn't click. It was just it. I was just like, why defend this wall? Why not just go into a
Or
castle or
go
something?
around, just
Yeah,
follow
just
the
like
detour sign.
yeah, this is kind of like, yeah, these orcs are really stupid. They're just hitting this wall. They could just go around it or whatever. But I was like, I clearly understood I was missing something, but it just didn't click.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's just, me reading as a young person was not a good deal. Uh, but yeah, so and like what's funny is that it's kind of weird, but you've counteracted it in the same fashion, and because of the fact you've always been sort of one step ahead and always so driven. Of course, I wanted to be a fat potato, And it was just so like, it's like, I want to write. And so I was trying it out, and I was fairly decent at it, but I was much better at storytelling than I was story writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened is that you created this vacuum that I've been sort of pursuing on that front, because you've always been like, well, I want to do this. I'm like, okay, cool. And the next thing I know, you're rocketed off in some direction, and I'm like, oh, shit, there he goes. He's actually doing it. Like, I had met somebody that actually was like, hey, I want to give this a shot. And it's like, okay, here we go. Like, next thing I know, you're actually effing doing it. And I'm like, I need to get off this couch. Like, do something. And I would try and be like, but it's hard. And I would just, like, work in college for 80 hours a week and think that was easy somehow. Yeah. I don't know. But it's like, it's weird how that stuff clicks. But now, lately especially, I'm just kind of like, yeah, I'm writing, I'm actually doing stuff. And heck, this podcast is kind of like the same concept. It's, episode 1, here we go. Yes, buddy Jesus. So the next part of it is that, so obviously writing's one aspect. Now the gaming part is really the fun part for me, because that deals with like world building and the rest of it. Now you mentioned 40K earlier, mm-hmm. and that has to be like one of the funnest times I've ever actually played. And that was because more often than not, I'm the one that's jamming, which is not a big deal. But being able to play under somebody I don't feel like I want to have my face caved in on, like, it's really hard because you get judgmental. I've been doing it for 17 years. So whenever I have a certain style and a certain way of running and a certain expectation, I go up underneath somebody else. I'm just kind of like, well, that's kind of stupid. Why is he doing that? Or I overact it. Oh my God. I remember whenever I was playing in this game that a friend of mine was running, and everybody was just kind of like, like I had been injured, or somebody was injured. It was somebody else, but they had been cut by a blade. And I'm sitting there going like, okay, that's bad, because if it's deep or infected, or, I'm thinking about it in realistic terms. Yeah. They're thinking about it's like, well, he's got certain level of hit points, and so he's fine. I'm like, he was cut with a sword. What are you, an imbecile? Like, what if he dies from infection? This is no, it's no fairy tale world, like I keep trying to tell myself.
This made-up game isn't made up.
Yeah. So here I am, like, rushing up to this person, trying to give them medical care. And they're all staring at me like, dude, relax. It's going to be fine. He's got enough HP. Yes, exactly. And we were all playing somewhat, like, higher level anyway. It was like, he's got the hit points to handle it. That's fine. I'm going to, like, he needs a doctor. Like... and I just, I was overselling it, apparently. Yeah. But, like, your investment into the 40K world, that's kind of like what I want to dive into next, because you ran that for a good 2.5 years in that, like, crusty place that we were in for a while. Back
working graveyard?
Oh, God, that was such a great time. Such a horrible time, but such a great time all at once. So... Like, didn't you try to get involved with Black Library for a while?
Yeah, but my writing sucked then. I mean, it was atrocious. I still keep a sample of what I sent in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just to remind myself.
just to bring up the self-loathing just a little bit, make it appropriate.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's not all loathing, because you sit there and go, damn, I have gotten better. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
Growth. I can look at that little giblet and like
giblet.
I don't know, it seemed like the right word. I'm a writer, damn it.
I'm good, patented. It's fine. We'll just call them giblets from now on. Any samples of anything.
Yeah, I'd look at that thing. I'd be like, man, I've improved. It's funny. I know we're wanting to get into the gaming, but I have rewritten a short story 4 times called The Fool. And I have 3 of the copies. One I lost on a thumb drive, my first one, which kind of makes me sad. I have the other 3 copies, and I've seen them. And I remember when my now wife, then girlfriend, who were dating, they're like, oh, yeah, I write. I'm cool. Let's read the story. And I've gone back and read that story. She said it was great. I think she was lying. You had to have lied when you heard that story. But it's kind of cool because it's one of those kernels. Anyways, the point is it's a kernel that's stuck. And the most recent one I wrote was like 2 years ago. And it was good. It was enjoyable, but I can still do better. And I know one day I'm going to knock that one out. It's not there yet. Yeah. Nuggets.
Yeah.
Good.
Personal giblets from Sean Crow.
It's not called personal giblets. I don't want people to have to deal with.
It's going to show up on your website now. It's done. You're just going to have this. You're going to have this.
That sounds like a bad website that people shouldn't go to. I don't think they should go to that website. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's kind of make it an Easter egg. You know, you click up in the top right hand corner or something. It's like, oh, my personal giblets. Like, so so like 40K. So like here, this is the part that I liked about what you brought in, because like for me, I was always like immediately I was looking at the system and like, this is percentile, this is kind of jacked, and I couldn't quite figure out how to like make it work. But we made it work like somehow or another. And of course, my dramatically overpowered assassin at this point, who's now actually made it to being a space marine, he's now a salamander.
A little bit.
yeah, he's a bit
fluff like that.
Yeah, there's a. Yeah, he's been far, but I mean, like 2.5 years, and he's had how many near-death experiences now? Like, I think the best part about that whole campaign in general was the first and most initial point, because he came in as a ruthless bastard and just didn't care. Like, that's the way that whole world's pretty much manufactured at this point. Just sort of like, you are born now, you do not care, just kill things. And it's like, and it's just like, oh, okay, cool. I am now nonchalantly killing things as ordered. And the thing is that he met that girl that was just kind of disenfranchised and completely out of it, and there was a bunch of different things about it. But he almost killed her to release himself from the baggage, but he decided to keep her alive. And then that storyline's kind of developed into an entirely of its own thing, and she ended up turning into Harlequin, which was, you know, a companion along the way, and that's been fantastic. Like it's almost like I have actual physical memories of this being this person, and fighting some of, like, and I just love to say it, Nurgle, all the different Nurgle-y things that he went through and killed off, and all that other fun junk, and all this, like, just being covered in scars like he is, like the various pus acid or whatever. Like, they really just go out of their way to make it disgusting.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and
that in his relationship. Yeah. But his name's also Nurgle, so it's just kind of like, what is this like? Yeah, right. It's a specific an STD for clowns. So it's like, I've got the Nurgle. You know, like you can't really.
That's a great description for Nurgle.
Yeah, right. No. Oh, you know what? You got a point. I didn't realize how closely approximate that is.
He's a pretty dumb guy. I mean,
yeah. But you know, that all being said, like, what did you? So you didn't have to create the world necessarily. You were just like steeped within it. You were like completely invested. Like, what was the process for like creating the next step? Because I'm pretty sure that if we get enough people to listen to this, that there's going to be a fair number of GMs. A lot of them are going to be starting out. Where did you kind of like, what was your process for kind of like deciding how the next step was going to go?
Well, you know, honestly, at the time I was reading The Horus Heresy, and I recommend that series. Anybody that loves hardcore science fiction, read The Horus Heresy. It's great. And I knew the world. I played the Warhammer tabletop, and I kind of played the 40K. I have a whole Space Wolves army somewhere in here. It's barely been played, but it is almost painted. But yeah, so I think for me, because that was like my real first attempt at GMing, like, and it was just me and you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I remember I shifted the rules a lot, and I learned to homebrew from you, because basically what I want out of gaming was, I want a great story that's gritty, that's fast-paced, that I might lose my character at any second, but it's going to be cool, you know? And so I just wanted to make that for you because, you know, I figured we're similar enough that we're going to have the same taste in that. And there's no fun in the risk if you know you're going to come out of it okay. Like,
that's true.
GMs that aren't willing to kill off people, don't GM. Or go, I don't know, make flower baskets.
There's some harsh advice where it's like, you're not willing to kill off the players, go home.
Go away. Man.
Yeah.
But
You disgust me.
why? I don't know. It's no fun. Just like reading a book, I know nobody's going to die. Has very little interest for me if there's no risk. And there are things worse than death, which that's great to play with too. But if there's really no risk, there's no enjoyment, right? So I was like, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I took that system because it was a weird system, and there were some things that I didn't care for. So I basically was like, okay, I'll do the rolls. When the rolls are successes, it's going to play out like it would. Like, okay, I have a las gun. I shoot this guy point blank in the chest. It only causes 3 hit points. No, we're not going to roll damage. You just shot a guy in the chest, and he had no body armor. He's screwed up. Probably dead. And so like that was for me. The next step was really determined. Like I set the case. I think originally because we started in. Hang on, I got all my books over there. We started in Dark Heresy. That's what we did.
We started Dark Heresy.
When it came out, which is gritty. You are nobody. You are a cog in the machine, right? Like you're not even a very special cog. You're one of those cogs that we don't really know what it's used for, but you're in the machine, so we can.
Yeah.
You'd be okay. That's Dark Heresy, and so I was like, okay, well, that's what we're doing. Toss us in there, and we ended up. We were going after like a low-grade psyker, but psykers are crazy. And so, yeah, it was just kind of one of those things. I wanted to see how your character reacted in the world. And then I just kind of morphed my storytelling to you because it was your story. I knew that there were things I would toss in there, but I remember like thinking the psyker thing was going to set you up for, some more odd jobs. You'd build like this name in the city. We were in like a hive city. You were going to build a name for yourself, and maybe one day you'd be like a top-notch guy, on that planet. Nope. We ended up fighting that psyker, but then the psyker rolled terribly, and it became a demon host. So that thing came through. The whole team of NPCs I assembled around us died, except for me and you. And then you rolled amazing on Divine Intervention. You rolled the sacred number, I remember, on Divine Intervention.
Yeah, that's right.
Out of that. Remember how crazy that was?
Yes.
Because we burned all our fate. We did all that. Rolled Divine Intervention. Holy crap, we made it through. Well, that was great and all, but now the Inquisition's on us because guess what? We just went toe-to-toe with the demon host, and now we're a little screwed. You got some weird stuff going on with you, so the Inquisition came in, and well, then you met Harlequin, and then things just started building, and we ended up, the planet got infested with Nurgle, and it just opened up this river. Like, I didn't intend this planet to go downhill so quickly, but it did. And they ended up, I don't even remember the terminology for it, but they ended up just destroying the planet because warp gates were opening up, and like Nurglings were coming through, and that one Inquisitor guy that just you had a grudge with, you two finally met, and it was a brutal duel. Samson gets sucked into the warp. Like it was crazy. I was just like, this escalated really quickly. Oh, we were in a penal legion after that. Like we got
Yeah. It was just like,
and then we got captured, and then we got thrown into a penal legion, and oh no, I got that reversed. Penal legion because the Inquisitor sent us off into a penal legion. We came back. Yes, that's how it went. And then
it wasn't even an Inquisitor. That's the crazy thing. It was some jerk who was like part of like city security. Yeah, it was a magistrate. Yeah. It was it was that jagoff. And the thing about that is that he just like screwed us. He drugged us, and after everything went down, like the whole team went down. We were the only 2 survivors. Like, well, the only way I'm going to get out of this Inquisition with my head attached is if I get rid of you two, since you're the ones that were at the center of it all.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, it was just like, and man, I like even viscerally, I'm just like, what an asshole.
Well,
like,
and that was part
and I love it.
Okay, because I didn't plan any of that. It was like, okay, what would this guy do now? Okay, he's got demon host on his hand. The Inquisition's breathing down his neck. He's got 2 survivors. What in this universe would this guy do? Penal Legion. See ya. I'm gonna save my own ass. Good luck.
And that's the trick. Like you're exactly right, because I do the exact same thing. I think you kind of bled off of that exactly,
Yeah.
because whenever I start thinking about it, I'm just like what realistically would happen under these circumstances? And it's like that's how these stories develop. That's how they get so crazy. Because it's like, well, if you had these psychos just show up in town and they're like, we are adventurers, like, and they show up and they create all kinds of like damage. And they're just kind of like, if you're the mayor, it depends on what kind of a person. If the mayor's a decent human being, he's like, look, I'm glad you helped us out here, but damn.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, go somewhere else. It's
Go
like,
away.
yeah.
You've
Yeah.
got
It's like,
thousands of dollars worth of damage here.
yeah. And it's just, but it's like, it's really funny to see how certain people react. And if you can create like authentic personalities, you'll see how they react and interact, like with the various people that come across, like the players themselves. And you'll eventually just mold it around because like when players and their like the characters they play stick together, they have their own energy to it, and then you can basically just kind of go like, okay, clearly if they wind up in like a massive urban area, there's a lot of different choices. Same thing if they end up somewhere else in the middle of nowhere. The biggest problem is like if you try to overly structure your game, especially as a GM, and you don't take into account that like it's like what is the living presence of the world you're in, because that's I think what gets lost all the time, and it gets bled into Adventures League.
Yeah.
Which is something I'm going to be talking about here in just a second, because I'm telling you, it blew the trash can lid right off the top of my head.
It sounds terrible.
So
It sounds just god awful. It sounds
yeah.
atrocious.
Oh jeez.
Thin.
Yeah. So I'm actually a part of Ventures League now. I even have like I don't have. Oh yeah, I'm part of it now. I've got these nifty little cards here. Yeah, the DCI Wizards of the Coast. Yeah, I don't even know. There's apparently a website you're supposed to go to update your stuff, because there's like this overarching campaign. I barely understand it, to be perfectly honest. I've only tapped into it just a little bit, a giblet worth. I'm gonna start using that as weird forms of measurement. Yeah, it's just sort of like it's about 5 giblets long, and like, but yeah, like Adventures League that was an experience, because again, been running these things for about 17 years. I've always done my own thing. I've never purchased a module in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I started when I was 18 in high school, and that's what saved my life, actually. It stopped me from doing all kinds of stuff. But the weird thing is that I just never got into the modules. I always wanted to make up my own stories. Now, not everybody can do that. So there's a position, a place, and a time, and like it works. It works for some people.
Mm-hmm.
It do not work for me. But I gave it my best shot.
Man, yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
I looked at modules. Okay, so the other time I GM'd was in my classroom. So like.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So I bought all the Pathfinder books. Basically, so yeah, I taught at middle school level in a special ed classroom, and so it was like I needed a reward system, right? And I was like, man, teaching is boring sometimes. Sometimes you get in a routine, and you're like, man, you know what? I want to spice things up, and I want to kind of like energize these kids a little bit. And so I made up a small class. You couldn't do it with a very big class, and I had a hard time when my caseload got larger. But I just made this reward system. Said, all right, you guys are all level 1. Boom. They made their characters. They got a kick out of it. I even found a cool website where they'd take a picture of their face and then they'd put swords and weapons and helmets and stuff. And it was cool.
That's awesome.
They loved it, right? And then I was like, okay, if everybody does this, this, and this, then you get to participate in the gaming this Friday. And I would spend the last half of my Friday GMing for these kids, right? And that, man, biggest motivator ever, and it was the cheapest thing too, because all I had to do was buy the books, and I would print them off like if they earned so much experience in the rotations, and then this session and this rotation, then they'd get experience points, or they'd get, once they got 10 of these, then I'd roll on the in the back of the book and see if they got a magic item or something like that. And those kids would work their butts off. I print off a little picture, put it next to their character, boom, they're stoked. And it was fun. And at the very end of the year, when there was really nothing to do, like right before or like Christmas break, the day before Christmas break, nothing's happening in the classroom. They put on a movie. So I was like, hey, gaming, let's do it. You know, and like those kids like legitimately worked their way from level ones. I think the highest level I got was like a level 13 kid. Like,
holy crap, that's actually really high though.
Oh, I know. And you know, I would give bonus experience and stuff like that, and I'd kill them off too. Like I would kill them off.
It's just for the record, you would kill off your children whenever they. Oh, I mean, like their characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, insufficient.
I was allowed to do it as well because with the kids I was working with, they needed help with like social skills, right? And so I make whatever quest they were on. Like if I had a kid that would have a hard time speaking, or I mean, a lot of it was like social anxiety. And it's funny using social anxiety to get kids to come out of their box playing Pathfinder. And so it really would though, like you put one of those kids that has a lot of anxiety, like talking in front of people, but you create a magical world where they can do crazy stuff, and that kid pops right out of his box. Boom, going. Like, oh wow, you know, and like always at the first, they don't know what they're doing. They don't really know what to think, and you know, someone would have a hard time with the sheets, and I'd help them. But yeah, halfway through the year, they're going smooth. They know what's expected. They're stoked. And the only time I would kill their characters, you know, it wasn't like when me and you play. We're like, yeah, don't be dumb or get your brains blown out. It'd be like, hey, this is a bad idea. Maybe you should ask the rest of your team to vote on this. And all the kids would be like, don't do that. Like I had one kid, freaking stubborn. You're like, don't do it, kid. Don't do it. And I would purposefully put tempting things, because like trying to get them to work as a team and stuff like that. They're going down this path, right? And I put up, I go, don't leave the path. Whatever you see off the path is bad. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter. It could be a genie in a lamp. It's bad. This kid, I did it intentionally thinking of this kid going, you better toe the line. Walking down this path on the shore. Look, a crashed ship and treasure. And all the kids are like, no. This one kid's like, I'm going down there. I was like, if you go down there, something terrible will happen. Yeah, but there's gold. Don't go down there. It's like, again, I'm warning you. I'm telling you, if you go down there, something bad will happen. Yeah, but I want to go. Like, he had no filter, so it's just like, yeah, but I want to go down there. All right. Goes down there. The ship's actually like a giant mimic.
Like, I knew it. I was like, oh my God, he's going to get eaten.
He didn't die on that one, but he had this really cool +3. Oh, he lost it in the ocean.
Oh, jeez.
He also got stepped on by a giant and died. But they had a high-level druid that could resurrect people, but at a lower level. And so they die, lose 2 levels, and he'd come back as something random. He went from being this giant half-orc to like a gnome.
That's appropriate. I dig that. Yeah.
But yeah,
that's actually what's kind of cool about all this. Like you took something that is like not just not only my favorite pastime, but you took it and made it something that was just like unbelievably helpful to a number of kids that are probably never going to forget that experience.
Oh no, I ran into a few of them. They're like, do you still have those books? It's like, yeah, we got them.
Yeah.
They don't get any use, but.
Well, and the thing is that's the crazy part, is that you got in there and you actually managed to help a whole bunch of kids that had like serious problems. Oddly enough, social anxiety on this end, big time, and it did the same exact thing. Whenever I realized that I kind of like jived with this particular turkey, it was just like I couldn't stop, and so I just kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going, and then I think overall, I picked up the GMing mantle 1 year in, and I think I've had bad sessions before. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been a part of them where I'm just kind of like, yeah, you go out here and you do stuff. And then,
yeah, I've seen you when your brain's fried.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's happened a few times, but it's usually because of brain fried, not because I'm struggling so hard to manage it in a totally different way. First session I ever ran after 1 year was such an abysmal like failure because like my friend Mike was just like he was like rolling and stuff, and he just looked like he was falling asleep, and I was just like, okay, we're gonna stop right here. What's going on? He's like, it's fine. I'm like, no, you need to tell me what's wrong. He's like, it's boring. Like it just. I was
You
just like,
suck.
yeah, basically that's what it was, and like it's so important to hear that though. Like it's kind of the same thing with like writing group and the rest of it. You really got to hear it. Like you got to be able to hear it at some point. And you're just like, yeah, it sucks, because you got to know what the hell's wrong, and it basically kind of pushes you into this position. It's like I want to stop sucking,
Mhm.
and that's kind of incredible. But I mean, like more importantly, like the fact that you actually took something like, shoot, what was it? Yeah, I'm pretty convinced that my mother and a large number of other people I've met is like, oh, this is something that'll never amount to anything. It's just a hobby. And I was like, yeah, but you're kind of like the success story that actually proves it can be done to do something not just for entertainment's sake. It can be done to actually like help people get out of major ruts.
Well, yeah, I
Um,
mean, honestly, you got to find what you want to work at. You know, it can be anything. Like for a long time, I thought it was going to be athletics until my back went out, right, and it was game over. My legs didn't work, so that wasn't going to happen. You know, like once your legs don't respond and you're trying to go, no, probably not athletics. Don't do it. So like, but that was what I built my life around. And then I was like, well, what else do I like? Well, I was the weird guy on the football team that would always bring a book and would always be reading and always thinking of a story, or so it's like, well, my next passion, right? I like to create stories. I like to immerse myself in these worlds, and I think every single person has to find that. Whether it's even if it's something like silly, like other people think, like gaming. Well, guess what? People make jobs out of that. Like you can have a career making gaming systems. You can have and it's not going to be easy. You might have to work some crap jobs, and maybe you have to. I mean, I don't write full time. Writing is not my full time job. It's my passion. I teach as an occupation, and sometimes you have to make those. There's some people out there that are going, I'm going all or nothing, man. I'm going to write all the time. I'm going to write. Well, you're going to be broke.
yeah,
I got a family to provide for. I've got, so teaching is what pays the bills, and writing is what I do on the side. And I learned that from my dad, though. Like my dad has worked in steel his whole life. He's been, the welder, and then he moved up in management and stuff like that. But that guy loves making knives. That's the good. I mean, makes knives. Now he makes some swords. Now that's what he does. And that's what he's passionate about. But you know, got to pay the bills. So
yeah. That's the one major reality that I'm always forced to face at one point or another,
yeah,
because working IT is a totally different animal.
honestly, yeah, you've got to be lucky to make it in, to be able to do it as a career, or you just have to do it long enough that it turns in your favor.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is that you got to get life. So like writing is about one other thing, life experience. If you don't get out there, switch it up a little bit, take some risks, or do like if you don't live your own life, then your writing's gonna blow.
Yeah,
Like
nobody's going to
it's
relate to it.
yeah, and nobody can relate to it because there's just not enough experience to go around. I used to think that I was going to be crap forever when I was 13, but at the same time, I was like, I can't write at the age of 13. I haven't done squat. I live in a town of 800 people, and then I don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it was really hard to generate these concepts that were built on reality. And then gaming does the same exact thing. Like the way that it comes across. If you're going to be a DM or GM, like having your own personalized experiences is going to play a huge role in how well you can actually do that and bring an immersive story across. Which, all things considered, brings us right back to the AL situation, because, man almighty, like I kind of feel like I was a bit of a prick. I just ended up. So I was playing at a local game store that's out in Corvallis, which is about an hour from where I'm at. And I was just like, I've got to get out there, get social. You got to do these
Right.
things. I got to figure something, because I was going nuts in my box here. I'm just kind of like I'm squirming around. I'm like I'm climbing the walls more than the cats that live here, and that's an impressive feat. So I'm just kind of like, okay, got to get out, do something. Stop trying to just do nothing. Let's figure this out. So we went down to a place called Matt's Cavalcade, which is really awesome, by the way. So we went down there and we hit it up, and it's like, okay, they have these events. The people were really nice. Their employees are really nice. And the best part is that, every Saturday at 6:00 they have a D&D event. Well, I've been trying to opt in as a DM, but I haven't gotten a response back from anybody. But the first night there, I thought he was really assertive at first, but the DM that came across, I'm not going to say his name because I don't have permission, but the DM comes up and he just basically says, he's like, hey, you guys want to play? We're doing AL, and I'm just kind of like, I'm nodding my head like a doofus because I'm just like, AL, cool. What the hell is that? Like, I was like, I'm here to play D&D. What's AL? He's like, Adventures League. I'm like, sweet. What the hell is that? And he's like, Adventures League, for like DMs and stuff. I'm like, cool. What exactly does that entail? I'm starting to feel like a complete noob. I'm just like, I've been in this forever. Yeah. It's been damn near 2 decades. I have no idea what this guy's talking about. And it's just sort of like, and he's younger than me. He's got to be like a decade younger or more. And he's identified, like he's going to school, he's doing all these things. And I'm just kind of like, okay, cool. I'm just doing, like nodding my head along. And I basically poop out a character for myself and for my girlfriend. And I get it all made up in 20 minutes, which is record time for me. Because I'm sitting there going,
a character. We'd spend evenings.
Yeah, so I was like, man, it's going to take me forever to build a character. It's like, well, we're going to start at 6:30. I'm like, oh, shit. And so basically I'm just like, yeah, I just basically barf onto this piece of paper. And I'm like, okay, here's this character. He's a monk. And it's like, backstory is like, doesn't exist. He just literally materializes out of nowhere and just follows everybody around. That's what I got. And, which is very much unlike me. So, but yeah, so I just like, oh dude, and it was so, oh my God. Like I can't even stress just how bad. Like, so he's doing this module and not even like, so even the DM is like completely disenchanted with this module he's running and he can't stop. So he's just going on and on. I'm too busy talking to other people. I literally fail to comprehend what happened from point 1 to point 2 to point 3. I wasn't paying any attention at all. And I just was just like talking to people. I'm like, oh, Grace, well, yeah. Like, it's like just having conversations with the people around the table. I even think he must have gotten frustrated at some point because I was just sitting there talking. It's like, he's like, what do you do? I'm like, here, I'll just attack that one. And then move back to the conversation because it literally was that disinteresting. Yeah. Like, I just went back to what I was talking about. And to give you a synopsis of what I can remember, I was in a caravan for no particular reason of my own making. I was just there. Apparently I got hired. Okay, cool. Didn't roleplay through that whatsoever. I'm just sort of like, okay, I'm here now. Materialized monk at your service. I'll just follow this caravan around. We don't even get 2 seconds on this trip. And I mean that. Like, he's just sort of like, okay, so you guys are traveling on this road, and all of a sudden there's snakes. I'm like, wait, there's an encounter already? And what's with the snakes? Like, basically. So, and then my monk, and I love monks, they're like my favorite class in D&D because they're martial artists and they kick ass and they're just amazing as far as character classes go. Sucks balls. Just completely. He was such a flash make. It was just like onto a piece of paper. He doesn't fit. And so I go into this fight. I swing a single punch, get bit and poisoned, and then I just miss every other hit, and then I get knocked out. And so I fail epically. Yeah, I'm like, I'm a monk, I'm poisoned, and that was the end of the conversation. And then so they bring me back up and I'm fine. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll try the next one. I try to go hands on the next encounter. Nope, same thing. I get smacked in the face by some sort of flying head. And then I just get knocked out instantly. It didn't even have one move. I'm like, I'm going to move here and okay, so that's it. I will just sit now while they go through their initiative order. Like, they will. I was like, but I mean, like, it was such a harsh experience learning just how incredible. What's funny though is I did learn the 5th edition is extraordinarily difficult on first level characters. It's bad. Yeah. Because even a skeleton at a quarter challenge rating damn near killed my girlfriend in one hit. He just swung the axe once. She got clipped up the side of the head. And I'm like, holy crap, how many hit points do you have? She's like, 2. I'm like, Jesus, move. Get the hell out of there. Like,
Run away.
yeah, one skeleton, just one. Like, that was it. She just got completely hammered. The caravan driver saved her ass. Like, it's like, and it was only because the rolls were in his favor. I didn't play favorites. Like, it was definitely not an ex machina.
Yeah.
God. And it's just, but AL, he has to do it exactly by the rules, and there's so much more going on. Like, there's
crazy.
Yeah, it's got like cards, for instance, like for all the various conditions. So it's like, you're poisoned. Here's your card, and it's like, okay, cool. It looks like it looks like diseased lips, and it just tells you that you take advantage on, or disadvantage on all of your next checks. That's what poison means. It doesn't have any other ill effects. It just is like, oh, you're poisoned. You're basically, your rolls suck. And so if you get poisoned, your rolls suck. That's the only effect that really takes place. You know, algorithmically speaking, I'm sitting there like, okay, that's simple. I guess it makes sense because but there's no description there. It's like, it's like you're not like bent over and puking your guts up trying to like.
Are you going to recover? Do we need to get some coal?
Yeah, well, and then sort of towards the end of combat, you know what I mean? It was just kind of like da 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 da, and I was fine. I was just like, oh, he's all good. He's no longer poisoned. Give me my card back. And I was like using this like orcish minifig that like had no resemblance to my character whatsoever. And I was just sort of like, cool, I'll just be this angry orc guy. And it was like I started to muse about using like a Lego person as my minifigure, like just to show.
You were that guy at the table, weren't you?
Yeah, I really was. I was that prick. Yeah.
But in your defense, I would have a hard time with that environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it just, I don't know. It's such a stark reality difference because it's like talking to you about the way the story should be and the fact that it's character-centric. Most of the games, like in AL or anywhere else, they're focused on mechanics. And not only they're focused on mechanics, they're kind of focused on this like, yeah, there's a story there, but there's not really a character in mind. And that's the problem. There's no character. You've got the classes, which are job archetypes. Like, what sort of a job do you do? And that's, it's like, if you're a fighter, well, I row around and I slash things in the face with my sword. Like, that's your job.
Best
you know what
ever.
Yeah, just...
Amy.
Yeah, right? As simple as that.
What I do, kid.
Yeah, it's just, but I mean, like, those are job archetypes. They don't really define who you are. Yeah. The backgrounds are kind of nice, but again, you kind of have to be able to put that extra chutzpah in there in order for it to actually work.
Well, yeah, if you're following a module, then your background doesn't have any bearing on anything.
Yeah, it really kind of doesn't.
Like, that's how I feel, because in homebrew, and if you have a GM willing to do that, then your backstory matters, because things will come back to haunt you, or things will, if you have a family, that matters for something in this world, because guess what? You pissed off that lord, he's probably going to go after him because he's vindictive and he knows where you live. And so that adds a touch of reality. But I think the other part of this is that people, I think you have a few varieties of gamers, and I think there's a good chunk that like Adventures League. Satan's
Oh, absolutely. And there's nothing against those people either.
Yeah, it's nothing against that, but it's a controlled environment that it's a game, it's a video game,
Yeah.
And games are entertaining, and video games are fun, don't get me wrong, but nice to have free will. And it's nice to have that, and it's nice to have depth. And I feel like there's not a lot of video games with real depth that immerse you. If the GM, whereas like homebrew gaming can really immerse you in a story where you actually care about what's going to happen, you're invested, and again, you don't want to be one of those people that's overly invested, because, you shouldn't be one of those people like, he's bad, I hate my life, this sucks, but
yeah,
we've seen those. We've seen, it's still a game. But it's just like a book, You don't want to read a book where you can predict everything. You want to read a book where you invest in the characters. And yeah, it might make you feel something. I think that's the biggest thing, and I think this applies to gaming. You want to feel something. You want to feel that you're a part of something, or you want to have that emotion. When I read a book, I want to come out of it going like, man, that part right there I got a little choked up at that part, or man, that made me feel something. Because I feel like an author that can make you feel something, if it's scared, if it's like, you laugh out loud, then they're doing their job. That is the sign of a great author, somebody that makes you feel something. Same thing I think applies with GMing. You want to feel something. You want to be drawn into the game.
Absolutely, yeah. And whenever it comes down to anybody who's doing the module kind of stuff, it's kind of, I think that those, I guess, and so I'm outside of that particular group for a lot of reasons, just personal preference being the biggest one. But I figure that those people are the ones that are kind of like those guys that you see whenever they're the hobbyist video game players, really, where it's just sort of like, I don't have a lot of time. I just got a couple of hours to kill. Let's just do this. You know what I mean? Because it's just sort of like, I've got my minifig here. We'll just go around. We'll kill something and we'll get out of it. And that'll be the end. Like they'll just kind of go at it. It's not something that's kind of making any real ripple in the life of their day. And for me, I guess I suppose that's probably why I'm so invested into it as on my own part. Because again, it really did jump into my life whenever I was at the worst possible stage. It was introduced as a means to kind of express myself whenever I had no means whatsoever. I'm living in Hickville. It was just kind of like, and it's like, hey, buddy, you want to go get some guns and just like, chew your bud and stuff? We can kill some elk. Like, it was basically that. And I'm just like, yeah, I would rather like talk about how a knight doesn't actually need to use that rope apparatus thing to clamp up on a horse, and they could probably outrun your hillbilly ass. Like it's just one of those like, it's just like, what are you talking about, boy? There's something over there. Let's go shoot it. Like I really couldn't like. I didn't mesh in with anybody that was in that area, and it just killed me. And then I finally met somebody who actually brought me out of that mire, and I was able to do something with it. But it did. It rescued everything in me. It was allowed that part to kind of come back alive. Yeah. And so I'm super invested. So yeah, it's like whenever it comes to stories, I'm kind of aiming at, like, when I get a group together, whenever I'm aiming at it, I'm just going to, like, I want this group to walk away kind of feeling like their pants are a little wet and they aren't sure why, and they just can't stop talking about it. Like, it's just going like, what the hell is that? I damn near pissed myself. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, whenever you can generate a story that literally you can't stop talking about for the next 5 years, like, hey, you remember that time when? Like, that is the greatest moment in a GM's life, is whenever they hear somebody, their friends in particular, talking about a moment that didn't happen in reality, but is so profound that they can't help but remember. They're like, you remember that time? That was great. Yeah, it's like, it makes a huge impact. And I think that anybody who wants to do a GM or write a book, either way, should have that in mind. Like, they kind of want to have, like, the person that they're reading, like, that's reading their stuff or actually going through their story, they should feel the same way. Like, it's like, hey, remember that time when? That should be like, holy shit, I did it. Like, that's where it's supposed to be at. And I'm trying to get there with my writing. I've managed to do that with my GMing to some degree, and I'm hoping to make sure that I do it more. So that was kind of the other thing too. But yeah, like, all of that, it's so important. Like, I don't know. I think that anybody who might be listening is just like, taking the step to just kind of like risk it all. That's kind of the point. I mean, that's why, it's kind of like, get dangerous is kind of the main point when it comes to the website too. It's just like, get freaking dangerous, like, take the risk, kind of go out there and stretch it out, be willing to fail,
It's funny, because you say, how you grew up and everybody wanted to go shoot that. Like, I loved going out and shooting things. Like, that was my jam.
Yeah.
Burns is like, hey, that's what we do. But it's funny because it was different for me, because we go out there and, shoot jackrabbits or go hunting for elk or whatever it was. And we sit there and talk about, what would happen if aliens conquered this much of the United States? Like, what would you do in that situation? What if they just had you outclassed? And then we'd play through that. And a lot of, like, I'll praise my dad to high heaven, but like, he put that in my head, because it was like, hey, we're going to go fishing this weekend. And then on the drive out there, we talk about books, or we talk about who was the best swordsman in this series, or who was that. And so, like, I always had good memories of that, because it was like, oh, shooting guns and talking about ideas. And then, like, I remember I moved to Burns, like, that nerdy, I made them nerds. Like, played football with, wrestled with, did track with. Like, no, we're going to go to my house this weekend. We're going to shoot some rabbits, and we're going to play Warhammer. that was the thing.
Yeah.
Armies, but it just different environment, different people.
Well, in your case, they seem to kind of have like that degree of, well, your dad in particular, which I've only met him once, and that was at your wedding. He struck me as being the kind of guy that actually kind of had the mindset that was different from everybody else. You go out towards Wallowa, and you know exactly what I'm talking about because it becomes this sort of myopic, ultra focused sort of don't screw with my reality. I'm kind of right here, then spittoon. Like
Yeah.
it yeah, just seriously, it was not a safe place for somebody like a creative could be because just nobody wants to hear that crap. They're just gonna like, you drinking, you smoking, what are you talking about, boy? Like it's all it was. That's all they had to do. Like I can't blame them necessarily. I mean, they were investing in their reality, but I can't tell you the number of toothless people with the amount of guns that they had going on, and the various heads that they had hanging off their walls. It was just kind of like, this is cool, but it's kind of like sleeping over at a witch doctor's place with a lot of guns. Like it's like I don't feel like we really mesh, but it's like, but then I still picked up those hillbilly traits to some degree, but it's like it comes out every so often. But the writing and the rest of it, like the creative work, I mean, it's allowed me to find the right avenues and the right people.
Yeah.
You being one of them. And then my buddy Mike being the other, and it's just like it's seldom about the quantity and a hell of a lot more about the quality. Just I don't know, like all of this is exactly why I'm doing it because I want to make sure that everything comes about and builds a kind of like a community of like-minded individuals, and I think that would be a really fantastic thing to find. So and I want to help you do the same thing. Which, speaking of. Let's see here. Your website is lordofcrows.com, right?
Yep, that's the website.
Yep. Yeah, and you've got the same name for your Instagram, so it's Lord of Crows as well.
Lord of Crows author on Instagram. So
Lord of Crows author, yeah. Well, and in this case, I suspect that for all intent and purpose, that you should like definitely keep doing what you're doing because I'm following what you're doing. And I just recently got an Instagram, and like you ended up following me, which is fabulous. But I definitely am enjoying the fact that I can see what you're up to and kind of like follow suit on those fronts. And I think it'd be kind of cool to sort of like build that up and go further if at all possible.
I really like, so I have not owned a phone for 3 years. Nothing, not a flip phone, nothing. Like I'm not a tech savvy person. I didn't even really have my own social media accounts. Like I got rid of my Facebook and I was like, well, I'll just tag on my wife's because I don't associate with people. And then like she actually had to convince me. She's like, no, if you're going to get your work out there and you want to build a following and you want people to read your work, she goes, you need to go and get your own crap, Sean. But never been a big like look at me kind of person. But now I've got a phone, I've got Instagram, and I really Facebook a little dead to me. Twitter is a cesspit. I tried.
You're not the only person that thinks that, by the way, man.
I hate it so much. Like I followed some people. Like I was just like, oh, it would be interesting to hear this person's ideas. All I got was this person is sucks. This is awful. Blah, 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 all these articles. Like I feel like I feel like Twitter is actually like a little view of hell. Like all the terrible human beings in the world are on Twitter. Like
it is just like a bunch of birds in a tree squawking at each other, isn't it?
You're just like I have better things to do. Whereas Instagram's like, hey, let's help each other out. Let's promote your work. Hey, you check out my stuff. I'll check out your stuff. Yeah, buddy. And Twitter is like, man, I can't. I have a Twitter account. I'm going to get rid of it. So yeah, so Instagram, Lord of Crows author, and then my website, lordofcrows.com, Facebook, Sean Crow. I should create a page. I need to create a page.
Yeah, I'm going to end up doing the same thing here in a little while. Don't know how long it's going to be. Probably in the next month or so I'll create something a bit more official, but yeah, going to wind up putting it out there. So, but, like, I kind of want to, like, push it out there. So, what's the story? I want to kind of get this before closing it out. Like, right now, you're trying to get this one book published. What is that book? Like, what's the title of it? And kind of just a brief overview of what it is you're trying to do.
So God is the book I'm trying to get out there, and runs with the concept of energy can either be created or destroyed, but we don't exactly know where it goes. Well, that applies in this situation to thought or belief energy, right? So this guy figures out a way. You've got this savant that goes, "Hey, I think I know how to tap into that. I think I can tap into that, and I think it's an energy source. We can convert it. We can find a way to convert it, and it'll replace fossil fuels. We can do this." Well, he's dying, and he knows something's wrong with his process, and he's never approached the high ranking officials in there with an idea that wasn't perfect till this time, and it's because he's jealous of another boy that's moved in there, and he's kind of taken all the limelight. And this savant has kind of got the mentality of a child, and so he goes, "All right, I'm going through with it." Right? What happens is he taps into a gateway. Basically, he creates a rift between us and that source of belief energy. So everything mankind has ever believed in, it's just been pooling this energy over here. And once he opens that rift, everything we believed in starts coming out, right? It becomes flesh and blood, and it starts doing what all the things we believed in. So people used to worship Zeus. People used to worship, Niklalakuti down in South America, the Aztec gods, the Norse gods, all the things that we have believed can come out, and they do exactly what you think they do. They alter people, they alter the world, and the more powerful ones start making power grabs. They start making power grabs because, if you think about it, if every single deity we believed in came out and thought that they were the god that created this place, there'd be a lot of issues. So.
Yeah, it would just turn us into a big old walking pavement. Like we'd just be walked on everywhere.
And so it's basically that's the premise of it. It follows four characters. You've got Cade, who ties in with a deity I kind of titled Hope, which is not so much an openly worshipped deity. Obviously nobody has worshipped Hope, but it's something we all believe in. It's something that every person, like in their final moments, they might be crying out to whatever being is out there. Like, I don't care if it's God, if it's this, get me out of the situation. It's that last hope. And so I call her Hope, and Cade kind of attaches it with her. I've got Aiden, and he's a British pathfinder that gets trapped over in Russia. And he ends up running into a couple deities over there, ties in with Odin. Then you have Andrea, who's a lawyer that's in Mexico, and she runs into Mother Earth. She also runs into who, look him up, he's a piece of work. And then you run into Saul, who's this young black gangbanger in Portland, and he's fun. He ties in with all kinds of crap. Baphomet. There's some. I don't want.
God.
Baphomet in Portland, it's rough. And but yeah, him and the Islander brothers, they're in there, and I take all these characters, and it's a worldwide event, and I intended it to be 5 books, roughly, just because I don't want to pull like a Wheel of Time that goes on forever. I want to bring something to an end. I know where it's going, but yeah, it's a. I'm going to say it's a great book, but that's why I wrote it. It's not out, so I can't say you can buy it. I have considered self-publishing it. Not the route I want to go. I want to go a traditional route. Hopefully reaching out to some of the agents I'm still waiting on. There's still a few that were in my top 5 that I haven't heard back from. So fingers crossed on that.
Well, good luck nonetheless. And
yeah.
What was the title of that book again? Because it actually cut out when you said it.
Oh, Gods Reborn.
Gods Reborn. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I believe I touched on a small sample of that too. I was trying to before because I was getting hammered with so much, but I tried to be part of your beta reading crew, and that did not pan out well for me. But I did try. But what I saw of it sample wise, it's got an interesting. I really do like the way that you ended up portraying his concept of the people around him and how it was written in that sense. It has a very unique style.
Yeah.
And you've got a very specific stylization too when it comes down to it. So, all things considered, I think that's a hell of a way to go.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hopefully it gets out there, because that would be really
Yeah.
awesome to see.
It's like we talked about earlier, though. If nobody grabs it, I could kill that darling. I'm already like a third of the way through another book. I Am the Oak. Might not stick with that title, but it's a fantasy. It's more of a debut novel, whereas my last book was 170,000 words, which they don't want that for first-time authors. They want you to come out with an 80 to 120,000 word book. 120,000 is a bit much, but 80 to 100 is really what publishers and agents grab onto, because you're less of a risk. And so that one's a fantasy story. I've got the prologue on my website. I've got a couple chapters of God Reborn on my website. I'm actually going to add some more content tomorrow. So,
all right, yeah, and that'll be the 3rd of April. So, okay, well, yeah. I mean, this is kind of like the launching pad. So, and I'm kind of doing the same thing, and with your help, I might be able to actually pull that off, and that's kind of cool. So, more than anything else, I think that pretty much just kind of closes it up. Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot for doing this with me. I had a hell of a conversation. I really appreciate it, and I think that more than anything else, we'll just keep producing. And by the way, there's something to consider. As part of the podcast element, whenever it comes down to it, eventually I want to start doing game sessions online, and I was hoping to put that up as its own podcast by itself. So I wouldn't mind having an old-fashioned player lying around somewhere to kind of make things more interesting, just in case. So I was one of those.
When you get things working, I'm sure we can find a time.
Yeah, that's true, and we can start introducing Shadows and getting people as interested in it as you are. So that's kind of the hope. Yeah, yep. Can really push it through. All right, well, thanks again for coming along, and I appreciate it. We'll have to do this again.
No problem, man. Anytime.
Thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Be sure to look for my upcoming podcast, where I will provide an inside look into the world of Shadows and more about everything fiction. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you can stay up to date whenever I have new content. Keep those dice rolling, and we'll see you next time.